Welcome to the Apex Sunday podcast, hosted by myself, Robert Ross, and John Dowsett. Today we're talking about the Qatar Grand Prix for MotoGP. And John, I'd like to start off with Jorge Martin and that horrendous accident that we saw, hit by Digia's bike. I think it's 11 fractured ribs, a collapsed lung. Motorcycle racing is very dangerous because that could have been much, much worse.
Wow.
I mean, I found it very, very disturbing. It's when we watch motorsports, this comes up sometimes, doesn't it?
Unfortunately, yes.
Fortunately, I mean, the injuries are terrible, but they're not life-threatening or anything. But that's probably his whole season done, or a big chunk of it. I think the question becomes, it's easy to judge, when do you come back from injury in these kind of situations? Was it too soon? I saw him almost lose it during the sprint, and I cringed. It's like, don't don't injure yourself again.
Yeah.
And the worst possible thing happened to him. I remember Marquez came back after
What's pneumothorax?
Crash. It means that there's air outside of the lungs, inside the chest cavity. So with the collapsed lung, it probably pushed air. Yeah. Not nice.
No.
Not nice at all. A very, very, very terrible injury. That's why you saw him sort of breathing so hard and with all those cracked ribs on the side of the circuit. But I remember Marc came back in 2020. He had his famous injury. And for some reason, he tried to come back the next week. And he said that's the biggest regret and biggest mistake of his career. I don't think it's a mistake for Martin to come back. I think it all looks fairly good. And he was somewhat not competitive, but getting a feel for the bike. But
I don't know. He's pretty quick.
Yeah, but terrible, terrible, terrible luck for this guy. So I wish him the best, but I don't know what Aprilia is going to do. Their test rider doesn't really have any speed for being competitive, so I don't know if they're going to be able to find another rider for a few races or not. But just very fortunate that Jorge survived that, and we didn't have a bad situation come up.
Still pretty bad. I mean, I was just reading here that he's got a drainage tube in his right side, which could potentially be removed in 4 to 7 days.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nasty.
Goes back to that question of, why do they do it? And they always say they feel more alive and so forth. And I know it's kind of nasty to say, but statistically, it's gotten a lot better, especially in car racing. But there's a lot of injuries in bike racing. And compared to car racing, there are a lot of fatalities, but we don't have them all the time, every season, anything like that. But fortunately, everything worked out for this time.
Kind of.
Yeah, I mean, for the ultimate workout. So
yeah.
So I guess the second thing to talk about would be Maverick, his performance on the KTM, and the whole tire pressure issue. I have to say this about Maverick. On his day, he's incredibly, incredibly fast.
Mm-hmm.
He's got 11 wins, 40 podiums, 14 poles, was it, in his career? But the problem is on his day, right? And I think it works for KTM as well. On their day, really, really quick. On their not day, at the very back or midfield. So, we get a line sort of up, down, very chaotic. We want sort of a steady little line up at the top to be successful. So they both suffer from inconsistency, and we've both discussed that if you don't have consistency, no matter how fast you are, you're not going to win a championship. No. You're not going to win a lot of races.
No.
So their problem is to convert that into a consistent performance. Now, it was reported that they had 4 different bikes on each rider. Each rider can select their own components. So they're really looking all over the place for a solution. So we'll have to see if Maverick's bike if that's the bike they need to all go forward with in the future. But the other thing is that this circuit is a very flowy circuit. There's not a lot of stop and go. So so that might make the bike perform a little bit better on this. So we can see that the Ducati is consistent on different circuits, but this performance doesn't prove that the KTM is going to be consistent, nor does it prove that Maverick will be consistent. What did you think of that performance?
Unbelievable. Like phenomenal. It was great to see. You know, there's nice dicing.
Yep.
Coming back to the components and the 4 different bikes, is it just a miracle that they got it right this time and put it all together like the Lego pieces in the right places?
It's probably a combination. Jorge Poncherel, the leader of Tech Trois, the team that Maverick's riding for this year, he said that Maverick actually showed pretty well in the previous race in various ways, but tires and so forth, we couldn't see it. So I think they've seen the direction before, and they've refined it a little bit more. But again, will it work on other circuits and so forth? But it's the strongest indication we've seen, because we've talked about KTM being pretty much at the back all season, and then boom, we see this performance from Maverick. Unfortunately, the tire pressure issue stripped him of the podium, but that's a penalty. That's a safety penalty, not a performance penalty. So we'll see how the KTM performs in the future. But I'm hoping that Jorge Poncherel, he's helped riders come into the sport. He usually has rookies in his team. Now he has experienced people. And Maverick's always been a little, I don't know what to say, that inconsistency, perhaps that environment that he's in can help him find that consistency, especially if he can start podium and winning races. I always want more competition. I know you do too, right? So
absolutely.
I hope that's the case.
And there's more. I mean, there's more this year than I expected, which is good. I mean, this last race was just brilliant, and it's nice to see not the usual suspects.
Yeah, and especially after the first 2 races, where it's like,
yeah,
you know, what's going to happen this time? So then there's the tire pressure issue, and I have to say, first off, this is not a Michelin issue. They have a tire ready. Pecco tested it briefly last year and loved it. And it's supposed to solve this issue of overheating and losing performance when you're following other riders. And one of the reasons this has become an issue is because of the aerodynamics and all the extra pressure on the tires with the new bikes. The problem is no team wants to sacrifice their own testing team to test this new tire. Dorna doesn't want to pay anyone to test the new tire. So here we are.
Exactly.
And the rule exists because there were a couple of blowouts early on when Michelin came into the sport. They suspect that they ran the pressure way too low. And you can't trust the teams to not run the pressure way too low. So ultimately, I think it's the fault of the teams and the organizers and not Michelin. And it's an absurd thing. And I thought, now that the Liberty Media deal has been approved, you know, would they come in and clean this stuff up? But no, because F1 has nonsense rule issues all the time. So I find this, I've had a few meltdowns over F1 rules recently, as you've seen.
Yeah.
I mean, I start to watch a race and just can't watch the rest of it because of the rules enforcement. And this thing is really, really unfortunate. I wish it would go away. I wish they'd solve it. But maybe we're going to have to wait till Pirelli comes in 2027. And
I think if anything, it's going to get worse, because what does Liberty Media want? Liberty Media wants people commenting about this on social media. They want to wind people up, and they want to get more viewers. And that's how you get it. If you wind people up and there are all kinds of comments on social media, more people are going to go, "Ooh, I want to watch that." It works.
Although I
I
despise that sort of bad press is good press nonsense.
It works.
I know it works, but
and it's a media company, so that's what they're going to do. And hopefully they don't destroy the sport, because they are damaging Formula One.
It's a terrible way to attract, but if that's what they're going to do, that's what they're going to do. But the other question I have is, didn't we see a rider in Thailand notice his tire pressure was in jeopardy, made adjustments during the race, and won the race? So when Maverick was asked if he saw the warning light on his dash, he said no. So again, to be a complete rider, you need consistency and you need the vision of the entire race and to understand absolutely everything you need to do. I'm not sure why he didn't notice it, although Poncharal again has a different story where when he went wide, that's when he noticed it to let Marc by, but he couldn't keep up with him to fix the tire pressure issue. I tend to believe Maverick didn't do that because he just said, I didn't look at it at all. Again, I think Maverick needs to look at himself and say, I should have looked at that because look at what Marc did 2 races ago. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. But I mean, you've got to watch your machine. You've got to know your machine. And they don't have the communication to the pits like they do in other forms of racing. So there's another.
It's up to the rider. Right?
It's up to the rider, and I guess that happens to be in the debrief that they probably are going to clear that up with him. I would imagine.
Yeah, especially since, I mean, Marc avoided it, but everyone was like, "Oh, what's wrong? Is his bike? What's wrong with his bike or something?" And then they figured out must be the tire pressure. So it's an issue and it needs to be solved. And I think every rider needs to pay attention to their dash for that issue, especially in the situation where, because it's a gamble, you predict where to set the pressure based on where you think you're going to be in the race. KTM didn't think they'd be at the top. So you really have to pay extra attention in that situation. So perhaps he could have kept the podium had that played out a little bit differently. But
I have a bit of a problem with it. I mean, you can feel the difference when you're driving or riding when a tire is getting hot. You can feel it. And it's a relatively broad spectrum of it's sticky. You get a little bit hotter, it's starting to lose a little bit of the stick. You bring it back down again. It takes longer to cool it than it does to heat it up. Right. And then you try and keep it in that range. So, you know what? I don't buy that, he didn't expect to be at the front. They know exactly what's going on. And I don't necessarily buy it that he didn't see a warning on his dash. He would have felt it. So that's just my take.
Well, anyways, nonetheless, regardless, very encouraging for KTM. I hope it continues. So
yes.
So
and Yamaha,
yeah, let's like qualifying. Agura start again, and Fabio Quartararo.
Yep.
I also believe again that because of the flowing nature of the circuit, the Yamaha does better on this, at least in Fabio's hands. Marc has all the pole positions so far this season. Pretty good chance he gets 100% of them, I'd say. I don't know if you saw, but Davide Tardozzi in the press said, we have the king and the prince in our team. And he's referring to Marc and Pecco. And I'm not sure how Pecco is going to take that, but you can't deny what's happening here. Like, this performance is pretty incredible, isn't it?
Yes, and it's incredible seeing Bagnaia, his improvement. Phenomenal. And a take no prisoners attitude on the track too, which is fantastic. Needed.
So to get to the sprint, I would say, and the race, this applies for the race too, great coverage again. They covered all the dicing where it was happening. not just showing the front. I watched the F1 race. They did the same thing in that. So, that's the way to cover races, especially at the top level when sometimes the front can be boring. Although sometimes recently it's been pretty good. Mid pack's usually really good. Sometimes at the end is pretty good too. But we saw some great racing. We saw the soft tire runners fall back. I and Aldeguer, great performances as rookies.
Fantastic.
Pecco again, not comfortable with this 12-liter tank in the sprints. This is again what Tardozzi was saying about the King and the Prince. He said Marc can adapt to the bike, different types of situations on the bike. Pecco needs his bike. So Pecco's going to work very hard, I'm sure, on making the sprints work, because that's a bit of a weakness. His fall in qualifying, we see them fall all the time. I'm not too concerned about that. Yeah, exactly. I'm a little bit surprised by Morbidelli, because last season he had the same bike, but a different team. But now he's with his buddies in VR46 because he came up through the VR46 Academy.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps he's an atmosphere team guy where he does better, just like I said with Maverick earlier. But some really good performances from Morbidelli. Although, again, I instantly knew, and I'm sure you did, that this was a tire preservation race. And when you saw Morbidelli go off, I thought, well, he's going to fall back eventually.
Right.
It happened in both the sprint and the race, but he still managed to get podiums. But I love these tire preservation races. I love that extra little bit of strategy of, like, I agree that sometimes perhaps if they were just all doing it and staying behind each other, it wouldn't work. But they were dicing a little bit, weren't they? And it's like you said, without the pit communication, the rider has to manage that and look at the entire race from lap 1 to the end and figure out, how do I end up at the best possible spot, ideally at the front. And Marc does that better than anyone else, obviously.
Yes.
Again, I saw people passing him and stuff, and I thought, no problem. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's going to do well. So,
right.
Unfortunately, in the sprint, Fabio did so well, but he saved the front end at the very last corner and loses fourth to Aldeguer. But again, I think Fabio is second to Marc in his performances, and hopefully Yamaha improves soon.
Mm-hmm.
But the sprint was enjoyable, good coverage. Anything else about the sprint?
Nothing, other than it was wonderful to watch.
Mm-hmm. The race, superb race again, great coverage. Great race from Marc. We saw how he, again, preserved the tires, just calculated everything, executed fast laps at the very end of the race, and just won without, people say without effort. It was a lot of effort, right? But he just does it so well.
Very calculated. Very, very calculated.
It's just a masterclass. It's just so nice to watch. But his brother, this race was a bit messy. Digia was very angry when he got smashed into. It does happen. Alex apologized. Just an off race for Alex, but he still finished with some points. I will point out that Digia did slam into Joan later and never said anything about that. But that's the nature of racing incidents.
Yes.
We had a good recovery from Pecco, right?
Phenomenal.
And Zarco on the Honda. Just
where'd that come from?
Like,
yes.
Both Maverick and Zarco, great surprise performances in the race. Great to watch. So I'm going to give this event a 10. I just loved it. And I'm going to give the rider, is very difficult. I'm going to give it to Marc. He just dominated the entire weekend. I will say that this narrative that it's a weak circuit for him is kind of nonsense because he's got a lot of podiums and a lot of second places. Now 2 wins. And I guess if that's your standard, if you can't win, then all of a sudden it's a weak circuit. And that's a huge standard. And I remember when Paul Espargaro got signed to Honda when Marc was at Honda, they asked Marc, about that. And he said, well, it's a disaster if you don't finish on the podium. And people got mad at him saying, well, he's putting pressure on Paul. And I thought, no, he's putting pressure on himself as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he expects. That's what he delivers. And that's why I'm giving him the rider of the event. What's your score in rider?
It'd be hard not to give it a 10. I can't give it a 10. I'll give it an 8.63. And definitely Morbidelli.
Oh, yeah?
Definitely Morbidelli. Oh, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I mean, just fantastic. And, I could feel the joy.
Oh, yeah.
It must have felt so good for him to be where he ended up.
Yeah, they call him the poet because he gives some emotional, unusual answers. But yeah, I'm glad to see him riding well again. I saw him win his Moto2 championship and thought, wow, this is really good. So, and he was vice champion in 2021. So it's nice to see a guy recover and ride well again.
Well, I was kind of hoping he was going to be out front, but it didn't work out, did it?
No.
Yeah.
But anyways, he got some podiums and good for him. So before we end, there's some rumors, very interesting rumors. Honda are rumored to try to be buying out Acosta for next season. So we'll see if that works out. Yeah. And these aren't rumors from the internet. These are rumors from Matt Oxley, who writes for Motorsport Magazine. He's heard these from various peoples in the paddock and so forth. And then the other rumor is Honda is trying to sign Toprak Razgatlioglu from WSBK. He's a phenomenal rider. Put him in the Honda team in WSBK next season. Bring him into MotoGP 2027 with the new rules and with the new Pirelli tires, which Pirelli does the WSBK series. Now, the bikes are different, but I guess a tire kind of has a character that perhaps it'll still have. So that would be pretty big news. Are you familiar with Toprak?
No, okay. I'm not. But you know what? I tend to disagree with you about knowing the tire having any difference at all.
Okay.
I think, at this level, if you can't adapt to a tire pretty quickly, then yeah.
Well, Toprak, basically, Jonathan Rea on the Kawasaki was winning everything. Toprak had a few seasons, and about third or fourth, he went on the Yamaha, which was not expected to win. He wins the championship. Then he goes to BMW, who's never won a championship, wins the championship. So he's a very remarkable rider, and he's a very front end type of rider.
Mm-hmm.
And all the riders in SBK say he can do things that we can't. He's like the Marquez of World Superbikes. So he may be coming to MotoGP in a couple seasons. So nice news.
Wow. That's huge news.
The other thing is, this isn't a rumor, Yamaha is testing a V4 engine. They're the only one with the inline. And they're developing an inline for the new rules, a V4 for the new rules, and a V4 for next season, as well as as well as having their inline. So very serious about trying to find success in this sport, and great to see as well.
Yeah.
So I wish them luck. Yeah. Okay, great. So next up is Jerez. It's a Spanish Grand Prix.
Isn't it Jerez?
Depends on how you pronounce it. Actually, Marc pronounces it that way. Some people say Jerez, some people say Jerez. So I don't know. We'll see.
I'm Canadian. I'll just call it Jerez.
Well, the Americans would call it Jerez or something. I don't know.
You know what? When I first started following motorsports, all I had was a magazine. We didn't have TV coverage. And so there were so many things I pronounced wrong. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's the Spanish Grand Prix. Lots of Marquez fans will be there. He will be expected to win everything. So we'll see how it goes.
Yes. And there's a bit of a break, isn't there?
After that, well, it's a week. There's 2 weeks in between that. I'm not sure. But F1's this coming weekend, and
25th to 27th. So yeah, it's right around the corner.
All right.
Look forward to it.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.